originally I was asked to host this seminar today, and talking about the theme of passion came up, and then immediately I started thinking about Nicole, and I thought back to when we initially connected, and inevitably it was during COVID, and I was like, huh. How did that conversation go? So I actually went back and explored some of our first conversations and our podcasts that we were doing, because that was the thing to do at the time. And you would not believe, guess what we talked about, Nicole? Talked about excellence, dedication, and passion for the profession. So
Yeah.
we come by it
Full
very
circle.
honestly. So when this topic came up again, I was like, we need to just be here together in this conversation. So that's why we're here. And yeah, thank you all. We're going to dive in just a second. But Nicole, do you remember any moments from when we first met to talk when our conversations? Because it was fun revisiting the podcast back in the day.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, well, no, I just was excited to connect with somebody else who understood what I was talking about. Um, and we had like very similar backgrounds, very similar paths, and it was just like a breath of fresh air and just like somebody who gets me. And I just will never, ever, ever, ever forget that. And us talking and then just seeing how we've been able to connect through the force. I mean, it's 2005, so it's been 5 years, but man, if you would have thought back to that conversation back in 2020, would you have ever thought you're now president of the NPC? I'm executive director. Like we never had that foresight at all. And so I'm just so glad that we had that opportunity to connect and now we're here to bring it back full circle. And but that was like what happened with us. But
Yeah.
talk to me like I know you were thinking about this, but what inspired you to bring this particular topic up now?
Definitely. That is where we need to go. So I'll start off by saying that my passion for this profession has built, similar to your sharing, like over the years, it's kind of grown and developed and built. And that started with that kind of first case of like, okay, this is a profession. I really need to learn how to do this well. And I need to know how to care for these volunteers and the whole ecosystem of it is. And the more you learn, the more you gain. And so I come sharing that uh, admitting and knowing that my narrow experiences are just like a sliver of understanding this. And so what I'm sharing today is I call it a conglomeration of all the awesome people, yourself and thousands of other now hundreds or maybe even thousands of others, leaders and volunteers that we've been able to learn from, connect to, laugh with, um, commiserate with, gripe with, all the things. But not to give away the plot, but it is really to look at this idea of passion as both people who are giving to the profession, who are taking and receiving from the profession, and how we can continue to grow our perspectives and understanding. Just think about the collective wisdom here in this room and how important that is to our profession.
And one thing that I just want to like tag on to that is as you were talking, I was thinking about like, passion for our profession. 5 years ago, we didn't know we were where we were going to be. But as far as even 10 years ago, before I was even in volunteer engagement. And what I love that engagement became for me was a formalized version of the passion that I had to lead and encourage and support people, right? And that, because sometimes people are like, oh, is it a passion for the profession? Yes, it's kind of like the clothes that my passion puts on because it was something that was always within me, but it was just like, it married with the formalization of it, which is why I can't tell you that I was passionate about the organization 10 or 15 years ago, but the principles and the core values that I'm passionate about engulf volunteer engagement. And I feel like that's finding those connectors are what's so important and why that, it's easy for people to be passionate about what we're doing, even before you even knew that you were a volunteer manager or you felt, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I'll share a little more about my journey through that as well. And I think that ties together beautifully where we're getting. Speaking of 5 years ago, I feel like we all measure things from COVID, but thinking about our profession as a whole, we've been through a lot out of the the jigs and jags of coming out of COVID and the recovery, special funding that was given, drying up, and changes to our piece. So we're also looking at how do we see ourselves as this collective doing this, because we don't, looking at the way things are going, where things are going in many different countries, it doesn't seem like there's going to be tons of funding coming for volunteer engagement out of the blue, or all this. So it is a bit of how do we strengthen our collective together, and how do we advocate, how do we build as a do it ourselves kind of mentality. And I never told the story, but I try to wear this blue flannel shirt that as I do my presentation, because it make me think of the DIY stuff that I do, in my basement, or helping others out in the community that way. I feel like there's a bit of DIY or DIO, do it ourselves, happening here. So we talk about how we need each other, and we really need to connect as a community to strengthen our profession, because it's not going to be a time where just opportunities are going to be coming out of nowhere, coming from macro level. And I feel like we really have to lean in together. So that's what I hope we can do today. And I've been hooked on this topic of passion for a while, similar to you're saying, that people start telling you, oh, you're really passionate. And then you start going, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And I think for me, I started reflecting on this as there's got to be a deeper level here. I'm a word nerd. And so we're kind of walking into this. I want to say, like, let's add some meat to this phrase of passion. And I think being a word nerd is fun, because sometimes you get really connected to a word, and then you find out that, oh, the definition is even better than you thought it was. So in this world where maybe it doesn't seem like we're in a world where great depth and dedication and excellence, topics that we talk about often, are top of mind. Everything's disposable, everything's digital, everything has a short attention span, and we even only get short times together. And I think that's a snapshot of the world, and that the first half of the definition of passion makes sense in that world. So it's this enthusiasm and deep emotional connection to an activity or value. But passion, excitement, you can kind of put some synonyms there. But the second part of the definition, which is where I feel passion really lies, is that is both driven by and evidenced by sustained effort and commitment. And that's why I'm excited that we get to sit here and have this conversation 5 years later, after being through some tough times, after many of us here in the profession being through some difficult times, sustaining and connecting to, even when the days when it didn't seem like that the profession was going to be a home for us in the future. We've all had different stages along the way. And so as we talk through, this is the passion that I'm talking about. It's that when we have a passion for the profession, it's sticking with it, going through those darker days, knowing that this profession is really special, that it has something beyond its bits and pieces that can really connect us. And a great example is I'm actually sitting in her office. So Joanne at the Ottawa Food Bank has been here now 15 years this week, and she foolishly lent me her office while she's away. And yes, it's getting decorated later today. So, but we're celebrating her 15 years dedication. And this whole organization would not be as strong as it is without her dedication and 15 years of committing year after year to improving the program, bringing that dedication and excellence to the program. So keep that definition in mind. And I'm looking at the chat out of the corner of my eye, and I see so many of you who are also deeply dedicated and experiencing this profession and learning and growing. And so I just want you to know, I'm not reading everything, but I'm seeing you. And we're going to get to adding more to that chat in just a bit. So before I head into my background story, what is connecting us? What is that passion that brings us to stick to it, to stay in here, and the passion for the profession? I feel like it's the double piece. We both see the value in the work of leading volunteers and how important that is to society, but then the care that we need as professionals to be able to do that well. I think those two things match together, and sometimes we focus on one, or sometimes we, are talking about all of it all at the same time, and it's hard to define. So I really like sticking in there that definition of that we're both seeing that passion for our role in volunteer engagement, where we're developing volunteer communities and systems and creating a place that cares for volunteers and make sure they're appropriately set into our communities. But then there's that secondary passion that we really, I think I'm calling people to today a little bit, is the collective of our roles needs care and attention too. And I think that's a big place where we'll talk about more as to why in just a bit. But to go back and just talk about the Wayback Machine and how I started to get involved and care about this passion and the idea of community, and this double understanding of community,
Oh,
is
don't
that
look at
I
me.
used
I
to
said
be,
that.
and I don't go back to the before times. This is in the aughts, the early 2000s, that I was once a guitar playing, goatee wearing, pre-hipster youth, who was a youth worker, a youth pastor, strumming my acoustic guitar, and I clean up okay too. So this was me, pre-volunteer engagement, pre being in the not-for-profit. And I started thinking about passion. And in those days, back before, in the before times, something similar to what happened in volunteer engagement happened as a path. So it was interesting to look back at that and see how my development in as a youth worker echoed my introduction to volunteer engagement. And so it was interesting to see that, the DNA of passion and commitment and dedication were there, but there was a very important piece that really superseded all that. It was strong community. And we're going to get into that in just a minute deeper, but I want to turn it over to you, Nicole, and everybody in the chat, with this idea of, like, when you think of passion for volunteer engagement, what does it mean to you? I asked some of the people on the VMPC board to contribute and what they thought passion for volunteer engagement was to them. And so I have a couple of examples here, both from Erin McLean and Kimber Bork, that you can look at and kind of share. But Nicole,
Yeah.
you have a
So
definition, and anybody in the wanted to, you can share yours and then get people
sure,
engaged.
sure. No problem. But I think before I do that, the first question on everybody's brain is, do you still play the guitar?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Next time you're going to have to bring it and strum along. Okay. Talking about passion. Um, well, I'm just going to read the two that are here for anybody who is just might just be listening. Erin McLean, CVA, says, it is heart work. It fills my cup to know that I contribute to making a difference through my work. Seeing goals achieved at all levels, organizationally or individually, is of great value to me. And then Kimber Bork also said, I really enjoy setting up systems and creating environments where volunteers feel valued and can see the difference they're making. A warm welcome, giving them the tools they need to succeed, or making sure that they know that they're genuinely appreciative of their time, their times and effort. For me, when it comes to passion, I think it's the thing that fuels me. And I say that because even when it's like what gets me through the hard time. And I loved how that definition said it's that consistent going through, right? I know that this is passionate for me because in the days where I'm just like, what did I get myself into? Why am I even here? That volunteer came talking to me crazy, right? I'm like, there's plenty of times I could be like, oh, I'm out of here. But it's, those are the days when I know that, like, no, 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 no. I just, like, one bad experience or one something that's a little frustrating won't dampen the spirit of it. Um, and so I love that we're exploring this also because the word is used often and a lot, and nobody ever really, I think, stops to really dig into that and, like, what does that really mean, right? So in the chat, what does passion mean to you? If you could put it in one word. I know I just took like 60 seconds and 3,000 words to say it, and I'm asking you to put it in one word. But, like, maybe a phrase, like, if when you think about passion, what does it mean to you? Drop it in the chat. Um, I love caring. Yes. Community. Yes. Connection. Look at all these one word people. I could learn from you. Helping people. Responsibility. Listening. connection, impact, um, belief, like having a little bit of faith, dedication, presence, being present, thriving, heart, purpose, enjoyment, all of these things. Um, I think we could probably take all the words in there and like make an acronym of what passion means. Maybe we should do that by the end of this. It's like, what does that mean? And go for it. Warmth. I love it. It's still coming in. Yes, word cloud. Um, and positive change. So I when you think of it in your role, passion in your role, like how does passion show up in your role? And I saw that earlier, like caring or compassionate, devotion. That I love that devotion. That's how it shows in your role. Being devoted. I love that. And perseverance in doing the right thing. Having like that integrity. Are you doing when people are looking, or even when they're not looking, are you still doing the right thing? I read a little bit about something about that today. Putting smile on people's faces. Wanting my days to count and feel proud about it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Adam, I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, shout out to some Ottawa friends I saw there as they were, all the awesome words were coming in. So to tie these two together, leaders of volunteers, like youth pastors, have some interesting connections because they invite, facilitate, and develop the most positive community possible, the community experience possible, for the hope that good can come from it. And so I was able to draw some parallels there between my past career and my current career. And it's very interesting to see that some of the things I learned on the ground with my guitar and my goatee, trying to be cool, already knowing I wasn't, was actually looking at how to develop a safe and caring community, and something that spawns community life. And I've carried that value with me, and putting it to practice in volunteer engagement. And it's been wonderful to see that so many others also, and you saw the words come out there, that connection, community, were definitely some people's passion words for sure. And so I think that's really cool. All right. So yeah, so my background is very much as a youth, finding that community as in need myself. And then it was a caring community that fostered both that origin story, that connected, that getting involved, and then becoming an unlikely leader in that community, finding even more people to connect to and be in community with. And then finally, that passion part of persevering through some of the hiccups, the difficult parts, and then both building that giving and receiving reciprocal connection that you build in community with others. And that's where I found the leader of volunteer community, not just in doing the job, but actually in supporting each other and seeing the whole ecosystem, which we'll get into talking more about just now. So in this past year and studying and getting ready for today, I did a lot of reflection on the past 5 years and even pre-COVID. And one of the pieces, the trends that I see is that there was a lot going on before, in the before times, even the before times when I wasn't in volunteer engagement. There were some amazing people doing incredible work that have solidified the foundation of what is our profession. And just this past June, I got reconnected with an amazing Canadian leader of volunteers, Deborah Young, who used to be on the VMPC board for a number of years and helped champion all the standards of volunteer engagement and helped a team of people and worked with the team as volunteers to develop a whole infrastructure of what our profession looks like. And so it was interesting to look back at her example of what passion was, because she's not going to come in and be like Nicole and I, who are very outward and want to share this passion, want to inspire people with our words and with our sometimes big bold actions, but she would quietly and dedicatedly connect to the profession and learn and be able to capture and organize so much of the work. And if you go to vmpc.ca and look at some of those documents, we use them to this day, and they're just so rich in detail. So I look back and see that passion comes out in various different ways. And so, it might be the loud, inspiring, connecting, networking piece, and both Nicole and I will share that we do that as a work skill. And sometimes when we're done off the screen, we're much more quiet and wanting to go get our book and settle up, or my guitar and settle up somewhere. But it is cool to see that everybody has their own unique way of being passionate and can dig in and connect and provide value to the collective. So the more I connect, the more I realize so many of these amazing characteristics coming through has created this ecosystem for us, and it needs fostering and care. And I think the next piece of this is that we see ourselves in this from one of three lenses, or maybe two or of these three lenses. And that is volunteer engagement a job, a career, or a calling to you? And I think that that's kind of where we want to kind of put some reflection in today, is that, it's a job you invest in, you make investments to try to get to what's next, right? That's usually what our job, like if you've had many jobs over the years, I know I have, I've done, several different, been a mover and a landscaper and sold high-end jeans at a clothing store for a year, which was not a job I'd ever see myself doing again. But we've all had jobs where it's like it pays the bills, gets us to where we need to go next, and keeps us thinking about what, we don't see ourselves there long term. Maybe you see volunteer engagement as a career. It's something you build in, you invest in, you upskill, you find, where you're good at things, your connections, you make networking attempts, and you work towards self-advancement. But then I think there's even that layer above that, and seeing it as a calling. And again, looking at my before times, that was a term used all the time in the pastoring world, is that, oh, it's your calling, it's your calling. And sometimes it had a religious tone, but other times it meant like, no, I just think you'd be really, really good at this. or it'd be something like, oh, I feel very committed and very dedicated to this. So I feel like the word is actually really interchangeable. And it's that sense of like, oh, I'm investing in this, even if I'm not directly benefiting all the time, I'm putting in investments to grow the whole, to help other people get better at this, to really invest in seeing that it's an ecosystem of itself that needs care and tending and leadership and the time and talent to be restructured. And I bring this up today because since I joined BMPC 4.5 years ago, it was the advocacy chair, and then moved into vice president and then president. I kept my eye on trends and different things that were happening, and a lot of our board members and others in the community are also have an eye on this, that the landscape of volunteer engagement seemed to be changing and shifting. And what started as one provincial association not being able to continue leading and folding and turning into a committee, and others across the country, kind of over the next number of years, we've seen a lot of changes in how leaders and volunteers connect, that there's less structure. And like, I think 10 or so years ago, it was that you had your local affiliate, you had your regional affiliate, and then you had your national affiliate, and each one kind of did their role and what was significant for them. So maybe it was your in-person engagements were your local EVA, and then you'd have maybe a once a year gathering in your regional or your state or your province. And then there'd be maybe, a biannual or national kind of level of advocacy or standards development, but it wasn't something that everybody engaged in. Now we're seeing that there are some places where there are no groups at all locally, where we're seeing that regionally that group has disappeared. So then there might be some local groups, but there's nowhere for them to gather at a larger scale. And so we have to kind of now look at how do we interact and connect and keep the connection of our profession going, and putting in the efforts to reinforce, to grow the profession. We also noticed in Canada, and I don't know if this is happening in other places, but some of the colleges, their volunteer management program has shut down. And then some of the people that I know that have teams of leaders of volunteers, say a national organization or a larger organization, they've seen their team shrink from maybe 5 leaders of volunteers down to 2 or 1, and seeing that it being a less of a team at their organization and more of a specialist who does all the volunteer engagement and then coaches other people to do the pieces they need to do. Or you might see a lot more people with the slash job on the volunteer engagement and events coordinator, the volunteer engagement and community development. And again, it makes it more complicated and difficult to say, like, who is our community and how do we support them? So at VMPC, we spend a lot of time looking at how do we do that better. And there's going to be some really great things coming out in the next little while about that. I know Alive is always looking at how to support the different leaders of volunteers in all kinds of different ways and shape. There's also AVM, I know in the UK, and PAVE, which has just started up in Australia. And that's so exciting that there are also places of growth. So we're not saying it's all doom and gloom, but we're looking at those places and spaces of saying, as we lead volunteers, we're also looking at how do we reinforce and get together and contribute our unique ways to shoring up and securing and connecting as leaders of volunteers along the way.
Hey, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna put something in the chat. So Erin McLean, you saw her quote, she wrote a blog for Better Impact all about our efforts in dealing with the changing landscape. So I'm gonna plop that in there. And yeah, over to you, Nicole, to share your
Yeah,
thoughts.
no, I was gonna say just what I'm curious is for everybody who's listening, if you had to choose one, where like how do you feel your volunteer in your state, not like your physical state of where you're sitting, but in where you are in the volunteer engagement journey, do you feel as though it is more of a job? It's like, hey, I landed here. I needed a job. It's just something that I do. It was as other duties assigned or a career. Like this is something that you knew that you wanted to do, right? Like you wanted to I'm sorry, can you put that other slide back up just really quick? Maybe you went to school for it and like as in volunteer management, something like that, or it's a calling. You're like, I didn't even know this was a thing, but now that I'm here, I'm so glad because this is where I'm supposed to be. Um, was there an option for obsession? Love that. Um, I can honestly say 100% for me, this is a calling. I didn't know that this was a profession, and just kind of like I had talked about at the top of the hour, how like every aspect of every job of everything that I did led me to when I got here. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is how I'm going to leave my mark in the world. This is what I was created to do on those boohoo bad days when I want to quit and I want to walk away. Something just keeps like just pulling me back in because it is woven through the fabric of my being. And I think so a lot of times when you all see and hear me talk about it, it's because it's something that is embedded in my soul and just the opportunity to encourage people and support people as they are supporting and encouraging others. Definitely my calling. There's other days where I'm like, well, how come I couldn't be called to be like a computer data analyst where like my calling would allow me to be like to making like 18 figures a month. But that's how I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, because if I won the lottery tomorrow, you would still see me at these webinars. You would still see me here because that's how deeply threaded within me it is. So I know, Adam, like we're talking about passion, we're identifying all of these things, but how do we put this into practice, right? Like, what is our call to action? Because we could be passionate about things all day, but passion alone is not going to get the job done. So, like, how do we, like, what's the call to action for all of this?
Yes, thank you. And I just kept thinking about all the things, the lottery thing, and be like, maybe a week after, come back after a
Yeah,
little
maybe a
getaway.
week.
But so I'll walk through a slide here just about like one, the call to action. Like I don't have to convince people they know how important things are, but I like diagrams. I like kind of emphasizing things. So I'm just going to walk through this little diagram to emphasize about it. And then, yeah, let's hit that call to action about what we need to do next. So we know there's community out there, the big world community, all the amazing things going on, and volunteerism is a huge part of that community. And then in all of that volunteerism, there's the volunteer engagement profession. And like, if you're not thinking about us, you're not thinking about us. If it's the phrase that I say a lot of time now, like it's redundant sounding, but it's actually quite insightful when you look at it. And sometimes people see volunteerism. You might even heard people be like, "Oh, look at all the amazing volunteers and the effective volunteers," and like all of our work just kind of gets assumed into that. And so I like to say that we have a very unique effect in this whole ecosystem, because then you have the volunteers and staff engaged in the organizations, all the people doing the work, helping out, making the impact, and that community impact. And we know community impacts both volunteerism and community impacts the community impact. People interact, they help each other. There's lots of communal good. We know volunteerism is impactful both to the volunteer engagement profession, to volunteers and staff and organizations, and to community impact. But what happens is when you apply us, is that there's a multiplying effect. And this is the piece that we help volunteers to find the right position, to find the right alignment. We help whole systems of volunteering and community to sustain and to understand when it's a really great opportunity for volunteers. We do that 200 tasks or whatever they call it. We have so many pieces of our job that help enrich and inspire and enhance. And so you get this multiplication effect of impact into the volunteers' lives and then therefore into the community lives. And I just feel like as you're doing your work and as you're seeing this as a calling, that's where it is that yes, community helps community and volunteers can help the community out on their own, just doing good. But there's something really special that happens when somebody dedicates themselves to saying, how can we align this so that it is optimized, so that it is a win-win-win-win-win for the organization, for the community, for the volunteer, and to really put it into perspective. And so this is just a quick walkthrough, is just like that's where we're really looking at and wanting to share that passion comes in, because you sustain and build those blue arrows that are on the screen there into even more impact, even more care, even more connection, that it just becomes that impact multiplier. And so the call really is to say, like, this little circle here, where it's the VE profession, that's what needs the strengthening. That's where we need to spend some time. That's where I know our jobs are busy and that they take a lot, but Nicole will say it, I'll say it, I'm sure many people on the chat here will say it, is as we give to our profession and connecting and getting together, it strengthens us, but it also strengthens our ability to do our work. And I think that is a really key piece of this. So as we look at that, we need new ways, because the old ways of having that local network, that regional network, and that national network might not always be there. So how can we find our connections and deepen roots and deepen connections? And I think that's where the call to action is to reflect on, where can I find that little bit of time? Where can I get involved? These networks are still there if you're not connected to them. And it's in joining them and stepping up into them that really is going to help rebuild and re-strengthen how this landscape looks, especially in where we do have control, which is in the volunteer engagement world. And so another article, and this one is from Carrie at the MPC board. We were busy writing a lot this past little while. And Carrie has a really awesome legacy of being involved at the local, provincial, and national level here in Canada. And she shares all of the reasons why she thinks and believes that being involved in these associations and getting connected is where that impact is, and where that passion can really be kindled and fed, but also be grown and multiplied in with others. So that's going into the chat right there. And I think that's where we really hope the call to action today leads you going forward, is saying, like, where can I get connected? And if I'm feeling that I don't know where to go, there's all kinds of amazing people out there that'll help. Nicole in the US, myself in Canada, we're always happy to talk about what's available, what groups are out there, what can be, how can we get involved as we see this calling to deepen our engagement to the profession. All right. I did say I would do something practical and give you a takeaway, and we do have a little bit of time. So I'm going to try to rifle through this. So we still have some time if anybody wants to pose a question to Nicole and I. And this will also be in the slide. And by no means, I always share when this I put up something new like this is not a complete work. This is a work in progress, and I do like sharing thought ideas, and that hopefully this sparks some thought in you as well. So what I want to share here is that as a practical takeaway, when we feel that we have passion for this organization, for this profession, we can then look at our volunteer programs from a little bit different of a lens than how do I do a good job? How do I, knock it out of the park, which is important. We all want to have that done. But I think one of the questions that I really come back to is how do I shape community? How do I steer people from thinking about volunteering as something nice to do as to thinking about volunteering as a deeply meaningful contribution to the community, and that kind of thing. So this matrix really helps tie in some of those thoughts. And to me, this idea of a values matrix helps us to really look at some of those motivating factors, but also how do we see our volunteers and how do we practice how we invest in our volunteers as we go forward. So along the top, you'll see three ethics of behave, belong, and believe. I'm actually borrowing these from my youth pastor days. It was an exercise that we talked about building community way back in the day. And it actually really stuck with me all these years that it came out when I was thinking about developing volunteer community, that these three ethics really do take shape. So behave is we are putting our focus on following the rules. That the 10 steps in that volunteer guide are the 10 steps. And if you don't follow them, thanks for thinking about volunteering here, but see you later. Where believe, the value ethic would be much more on like, we believe in your organization. This is the XYZ not for profit is the bee's knees, and it's the thing that is going to save and help and fix all the problems in the world. So it's more on the thought side. So if we talk behave is the actions, believe is the thoughts, or the believing the right things or aligning to the cause, and then you have the belong, which is the belonging to in sense of like feeling connected to, feeling that you're a part of that community or connected to. So these are the three value ethics, and then putting it into a matrix alongside these three different focuses. So the focus of a volunteer on a self focus with the volunteer, it's about them. On a community impact focus, it's about the community as a whole, and then as an organization or staff-based focus. And so if you have these different pieces lined up, what we can look at is that these create different environments. So for example, we'll just quickly go through the behave category here. So if we talk about behaving being the most important ethic, and we have volunteers that have a volunteer focus, like it's all about the volunteer, you might have the sense of do-gooders coming out, the people that have a high commitment, but they're really like, ooh, this makes me feel good. This is great. I'm so great. This is good work. And they might be very dedicated, but they might be missing some of the other aspects that you need in your volunteer engagement. When we think about behaving and a community focus, you might have good stewards. So they're high action and a sense of duty, but and commitment, but they may be distant. They may be like, okay, what do you need me to do? All right, I did it. And then I'll be back next week. And then if we look at the value matrix of behave and staff or organization focus, this is the one that we all try to stay away from, is that sense of like, yep, they're here, they're going to follow what we tell them, and they're going to help us do our work and what we need to do. And that's, again, an area where we want to be careful to stay away from trying to elicit free labor from volunteers, because we know that volunteering is not a replacement for labor. On the other end, the belief side, if you have people who are diehards about your cause and they're focused on themselves, you're going to get this sense of people feeling like they're heroes, that they're the ones that are to be centered to think about it. So we think about that on that front. when we look at the belief and community focus, you get advocates. You get people who are super committed to your cause. They have a strong voice, but they also can take that message out into the world, maybe without um, consent or without kind of following the guidelines that your organization uh, has in place. And then on the far side, you have this idea of if believe is the strong focus and organization, you might get some free PR. And though we need people to talk about our organizations, it might not always be in its extreme a healthy place. And then in the middle here with belonging, we have this idea that with a self focus, your people might feel really connected, but it might really feel like a social club. And on that, they're coming regularly, they're enjoying, they feel that this is a home for them. But if you try to change things, they might be like, yeah, we're kind of just having fun here. And they might find another place to settle. And then at the bottom there is the belong and staff organization focus, where you might be building a great pipeline for new hires, a new commitment, maybe new donors, but that can also lead to some complications there as well. And then in the center, we have that belong. And if you have people who volunteer, who feel like they belong, but they have a community impact focus, you do have this nice sense of they're centered, they're connected, that we can really invest in the collaboration of everybody together, but it takes investment to get to that place. And that's where when we talk about building belonging, that it's not a short term, it takes passion, it takes that deeper dive, it takes that investment into where we can really help. And none of these, except for maybe the bottom left corner, are completely wrong and having some aspects of that in your organization. But you want to make sure that we're balancing it out and building a strong center of belonging, and belonging as a sense of volunteers and us as leaders of volunteers, that we're here for the larger community and that we don't lose sight of that in all the great engagement that we're doing. So it's just a takeaway piece that we can add to that, and how our passion can actually help us move around that map.
Hey, Adam, really quick,
Yep.
I just wanted to touch on something that you said that I think is so important, especially under the behave and the volunteer self-focus, right? It's like high commitment, high self-focus. Um, I believe like the intention of that is so important,
Yeah.
because volunteering can be a form of self-care. It can be the way that you give back. And I was looking for my book. That's why y'all saw me looking all frantic. There's this book. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's called Wonder Drug. Oh, you can't see it. It's called 7 Scientifically Proven Ways That Serving Others is the Best Medicine for Yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is trying to take the stigma off of, well, if I volunteer and I benefit from it, then I'm a bad person because I benefited. Um, and that's so not the case. I was having a conversation with somebody recently who was like, I don't know if it's really, they literally said, I don't have time to volunteer, right? I'm going to the school, I'm helping out with the PTA and I'm doing all these things. And I was like, but that's literally volunteering. That's literally volunteering. And just because you happen to be a direct benefactor of the volunteering that's being done, it doesn't make it selfish. It doesn't make it wrong. It still makes it okay, because at the end of the day, you showed up and somebody didn't. And not only did you help your community, yes, okay, so you benefited, but so did your child who you were helping,
Yeah.
all the kids in that classroom, the community at large. You were able to be a representative to other children in that room who maybe their parents couldn't come. You have shown up as another adult that they can trust in. So the benefits of it are so far wide, just so great. And just so yes, you will have volunteers that are coming in, and so long as their self-focus isn't I'm getting all the glory and I'm getting, I'm getting all the prize shifts and I'm getting this, but if they're coming and they are benefiting from it,
Yeah.
let them come.
And that's the best part. And that some recent data was sharing that almost all volunteers have multiple motivations for volunteering, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't a you're in one corner at all. This is like a map, right? And people see their organization. And one challenge for me coming into a food bank is that I was in previous leadership of volunteers to Christie Lake Kids. We were in it, right? We were with the kids. It was very like heart driven, connected, and there's lots of ease in creating community around that, right? Where the food bank, it's a lot harder. Sometimes you're a step behind, kind of if you're in a warehouse, how much community can you build in a warehouse? But it's amazing as we get to meet people and hear their stories and how they connect and how they build community in the strangest of places, including a warehouse. That community exists in all these places. So it's really cool to see, yeah, the multiple motivations, but also then the multiple impacts. So but the neat thing is being able to look at it and say, okay, if I surveyed my volunteers, or if we're at a AVA level, if we looked around the table and said, like, where do we feel? Do we feel we're behaving, or feel we're doing this because we believe in it, or are we doing this because we belong? You'd probably get a lot of different answers. So it's an opportunity to kind of use it as a map to kind of guide where people are feeling. And I led a workshop probably about a year and a half ago, and I introduced this a little bit. And one of the people in the audience was both a leader and a volunteer of this organization. He's like, oh, wow, I feel like free labor. And we were able to have a really good conversation about how to shift that feeling of motivation to see that, maybe there's some things to change about how he approaches volunteering or the organization approaches volunteering. So definitely ties into that. But if you're just seeing it as a job, you're not going to engage this level of thinking about, okay, I can shape the community. I can steer people towards building and fostering that deeper community, or helping people feel good if they're entirely in the behave category, that they're giving, to help them feel that balance of both their value back to themselves and the value to the community. And that's a very healthy way to connect on it as well. So to take away, we're not going to go into these questions today. We have a few more minutes, but there are some reflection questions to be added to that, and that will help walk through either your ecosystem and your communities and how behaving, belonging, and believing connect. But we definitely want to leave time to chat with you and connect and see how we can keep connecting in the future. So Nicole, to you, like as we start heading out, what are your favorite ways to connect and foster that new connections in the leader volunteer world?
Oh, well, it's right there. That's one of my favorite, being having an alive membership, it fosters connections in ways that you would never experience, in ways that I would have never dreamed. Um, and yes, we might be a local associate, a national association that, serves primarily US members. However, the amount of my Canadian fellows that I have connected with because of being in this association, we service US, right? Because all of our webinars are during US times, but I connect with people in Australia and England and Ireland and Canada, and all of that came because of joining Alive. And the same thing will happen with VMPC. LinkedIn, following people on LinkedIn, different communities of practice, and just, reaching out to people and having a conversation. You'll be surprised at how many people will just say yes.
Everybody out there, if there are things that are outside your control, but connecting is not. So I think that's a good leaving message here, that we have a calling that we're attending to, and that the more we connect together, the more we get to bond, to build, and to really have amazing times together that will help us move the needle forward and get to building up our profession and making sure that it's strong and secure and a great place to foster and grow new professionals in the field. So thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again soon and connecting. Cheers.